as long as you're using something that you think is giving you credible results, then I think that's great. And what I would recommend to appraisers, though, is don't rely on just one method.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast.
Minisode.
And welcome, everybody. Dustin Harris hanging out with you once again in the podcast chair. Thanks for joining me today. Another mini-sode for you today. I want to pause here, remind you that we are sponsored by ANow software. ANow, of course, is the software that I use to manage my entire appraisal office. That means work file, that means calendar, that means schedules, that means finances, that means the progress of each and every single appraisal report that we do. It also means the analytics, so I can look at it as a business owner. Folks, if you've not checked out this great software, you need to. It's ANow. You can go to their website at www.anow.com and then put a /coach at the end of that. So it's anow.com/coach, and you will get 3 free months of my all-star team. That's anow.com/coach. Well, folks, I've got a very special individual that I've been wanting to get on the program for a very long time. Consider this individual a friend of mine. You might know him as the man behind Spark and of course Trendsheet. His name is Brandon Reich. And Brandon, welcome to the program, my friend.
Man, Dustin, thanks so much for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Well, likewise. I've always enjoyed our conversations in the past. We've had multiple conversations at conferences and in various other places. And I love what you're doing for the industry. I love your focus. Let's start first with the foundation. Let's talk a little bit about your background.
Yeah. So basically, I started appraising I'm in the Phoenix market, by the way. Started appraising right around 14 years ago here. Got into it right around 2005, and I thought I was going to be rich, and it was the easiest job ever. That didn't really pan out. Didn't work out the way I expected. No. So 4 years ago, I think maybe years ago, I built this spreadsheet kind of just for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what ended up turning into Trendsheet. But basically, I started off in this small, a sort of a large appraisal firm at the time. And then I was kind of doing things the way everyone in the office did them. And then I left there, went out on my own and realized, there might be a better way to do some of this market analysis rather than just checking stable every time. So
wait a minute. I thought that's what you're supposed to do. No?
Yeah,
crap, I've been doing it wrong.
My sheet said
that's
stapled to my desk or
right.
to my wall. But yeah, so I that's kind of what got me into building Trendsheet, which I just made for myself in the beginning. It was just a way for me to kind of go in and analyze my market the way I wanted to. And I like to do it over 2 years and blah, 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 all this stuff. And I gave it to a few friends and they liked it a lot. And somebody convinced me to try and start selling it. So I did. And I was kind of amazed that somebody would be willing to pay me money for a spreadsheet. And so I kind of added on to it and improved on it over time and added in adjustment support, the really exciting topic of adjustment support here. Yep. And then once I kind of got into that, I was talking to my brother and he was saying, if appraisers really need this kind of thing and they're paying you for it, obviously it means they need it. So maybe we can build something slicker, a little cooler, and rather than just a spreadsheet. And so that's kind of what got us into Spark. And basically Spark is a Trendsheet I've been making and selling for right around 4 years now, and Spark for about 3.5 years. And I'm still an active appraiser. To be honest, I don't do that many appraisals anymore though. You appraisers keep me busy with the phone calls and everything, and adding on features to Spark and Trendsheet. But yeah, I still an active appraiser. I do mostly pre-listing work right now, non-lender work, and that's about it as far as the background.
What's your background in what I'm going to call nerdology? In other words, what makes you in other words, a lot of appraisers won't say, you know what, I don't like to just click stable all the time. I would like to actually put together a spreadsheet, and most of us honestly don't have the expertise to put together what you've put together. So I'm assuming there's some background in some bean counting maybe in the past.
Well, the only background in nerdology is just that's kind of who I am to my core. Is I don't have I have no taken any class in any of this kind of stuff, like it's building spreadsheets or writing software or writing code. It's mostly just kind of, I wanted to do it and I like that kind of stuff. And so I just went onto Google and did searches and said, hey, how do I make a spreadsheet that does this? And that's kind of how I learned, just kind of Google search. Google's my teacher.
I love
basically.
it. I love it. Okay. So you've mentioned a couple things here. You've mentioned Spark. You've mentioned Trend Sheet. Let's break those down a little bit. Let's talk first of all about Spark. What describe first for someone who doesn't know what Spark is, what is that?
Yeah. So Spark it's a web-based software tool for appraisers, real estate appraisers. I should clarify, residential real estate appraisers. Okay. And it basically allows you to data from MLS records into your state for your subject and comps. And it also, the part that I kind of like most about it is the market analysis. Going back to originally why I made that first spreadsheet, it will allow you to create virtually any kind of analysis you want on your market, comparing different sets of data against each other over whatever periods of time you want, using whatever features, excluding REOs and short sales or whatever you want to do, and then build charts and comments based on all that. That's what I think is kind of in my opinion, the coolest feature of Spark. Time savings, though, probably the best feature is loading in the MLS and public records data into your grid. And then we also last year added in cost data. So now Spark can also reach out, grab cost data, and load in that data into your cost approach if you want to. And it also includes some tools to help you with your opinion of site value. If you don't have vacant land sales, we have an extraction tool and an allocation tool in there. So that's kind of, broadly speaking, it's data importing, market analysis, and cost data.
Okay, so basically time-saving features, things that appraisers should or are doing regularly or manually. This allows you to kind of automate that process.
Exactly. Yeah, You got it exactly. Okay. A lot of times appraisers get angry or scared or whatever word automation. So I want to clarify that, like a lot of other tools out there, Spark does not. We don't tell you what your market's like, if your market's increasing, stable, or declining. We don't tell you what your cost approach should be. We don't tell you what your opinion of site value is or should be. We basically Spark presents the appraiser the data quickly and accurately based on how the appraiser wants to analyze it. And then so the appraiser can go in and make their determination. So kind of we wanted to take out the tedious form filling part of the appraisal job out of it and let you just focus your brain on the actual fun part of the job. At least what I think is the fun part of the job is the actual analysis. And
does it work anywhere or is it only certain markets?
It is only certain markets, unfortunately. So we do work right now for about 65 to 70% of appraisers nationwide. There are a lot of smaller MLSs that we're still not working in. So if you, so there is a coverage area, and at the end I can tell you how to go check that out if anyone's interested.
Yeah, remind me if we don't hit on that, we need to focus back on that as well so that they know exactly, if it'll work in their area. So you also talk about this thing called Trend Sheet. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so Trend Sheet was that spreadsheet I first made, and there's been a few improvements over time. Right now we're at Trend Sheet 4 is the version, and basically Trend Sheet was originally something I made to basically do a market analysis. It will allow you to do up to a 2-year market analysis by quarter, and it gives you the data based on average price or median price or average price per square foot, however the appraiser prefers to see it. And then it also breaks out the data if they want to see it without distress sales, and it also breaks out the seller concession percentages over those same 8 quarters in time. And then in Trend Sheet 4, what we added was a lot of help with adjustment support. And Trend Sheet's kind of unique in the way it works among other tools. I would say that for most appraisers, I would not recommend using Trend Sheet alone as a tool to help you with your adjustment support because, here, let me just explain it. So basically, Trend Sheet there's 3 different ways that it can help you with adjustments, 3 different methods, I should say. There's grouped data, where basically it will compare all homes in a certain GLA range to all homes in another GLA range, or all homes with a swimming pool against all homes without a swimming pool, to give you like an indicator of what the adjustment might be. And that's group data, and that's based on the MLS data that you load in. But where it gets unique is with a la mode products, Trend Sheet will actually integrate into your report, or I should say into your actual file with a la mode. So whether you're using total or win total, and it will basically read your sales grid on the fly. So as you go in and type up your sales grid, it can read it on the fly and basically a paired sale analysis on your comps that you actually typed into your grid, and it will also perform a sensitivity analysis. And just to be clear on what I mean by sensitivity, because some appraisers think different things, is basically it's what a lot of us do when we're typing up our report. We go in there and we say, okay, well, if I changed my GLA adjustment to $65 a square foot, my comps would all actually adjust closer to each other. So maybe that's the better adjustment to use, or with whatever adjustment we're talking about, lot size or whatever. And so that's what Trendsheet does in the sensitivity part, is it reads your grid and it tells you, okay, if you change your GLA adjustment to 65, your grid would actually be, I call it tighter. You'd have a tighter grid, a smaller range of adjusted values. And so that might be the better adjustment to use. And it does that for, GLA, lot size, bedroom, bathroom, garage. So that's basically how it works. It reads your sales grid, which is unique. And if you don't know what your adjustments should be, it's not a good tool to use. It relies on you actually having a good idea of what the adjustment should be. You have to be in the ballpark. If you're not in the ballpark, it's gonna give you not very accurate data, because you want to have a tool that helps you come up with that adjustment from scratch first. And then Trendsheet will help you confirm that that's accurate and give you support if for your work file or whatever it is. Or if you are really confident in all your adjustments, but you just don't know one, it's a great tool for that as well. As long as you know all of your adjustments but one of them, then it also works well for that.
So it sounds like it's making suggestions or helping you to decipher data, but it's not doing it for you, kind of the old black box issue where, you plug it in, you get a number out, but then you can't really explain it. Your goal here is to help appraisers to analyze by giving them the data that they need to analyze.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's basically, like I said, I built it for I wanted to be able to just somebody, here's my thought process, here's where I got this number. And it's just a quick way to give you the number. And then it also, in Trendsheet, we have a section where it gives you like a layman's explanation of what sensitivity means and what paired sales is. So that way, if you want to, you can copy and paste that right into your report to let your reader know, like, here's how the method works and here's why I used it, basically.
I want to talk more about supporting adjustments, support in general, why that's important for appraisers. But I want to do that after the break. But before we go to the break, there's one other thing that you I don't think have mentioned yet. And I know it's similar to what you're talking about already, but tell me the difference between Trendsheet and Trendsheet Lite.
Oh, yeah. So Trendsheet is if the appraiser area where I haven't basically mapped out the data for that area, then an appraiser in virtually any MLS, as long as it's an MLS that allows you to export basic data like sale price and sale date and list price, if you can export that, then Trendsheet Lite will work for you. You don't have to be in one of those major metropolitan areas that I've already mapped. You can be basically anywhere. So Trendsheet does virtually the same thing, except that it will not give you data on seller concessions or foreclosures, REOs, I should say. So it won't help you with that part of if you're filling out the 1004 MC or, analyzing your market. It won't do those two things. And lastly, that method I told you about where it does data, where it will allow you to compare all home pools against homes without swimming pools, for example, it doesn't work with that method either. But it does have what I consider the better methods, which are the paired sales and sensitivity, where it actually analyzes your grid. Because for analyzing your grid, it doesn't matter what MLS you're in, because it's reading your grid. So yeah, Trendsheet Lite, it's a great tool if you're in an area where we don't have full Trendsheet for there, and you still get that paired sales and sensitivity, which I think is a really cool tool.
Awesome. We're talking with Brandon Reich of Choice Valuation. He's talking about his program Spark, Trendsheet Lite. When we get back from the break, I want to talk more, Brandon, about adjustments and some things that we as appraisers sometimes worry about, and hopefully you can alleviate some of those fears. I want to alleviate some of your fears about running your business and the time that it takes to run your business. And whenever I can use technology to help me with that process, I reach out to that technology. ANow software is that technology that will allow you to be able to keep track of everything that happens in your appraisal office. What does that mean, Dustin? Well, would you like to follow the path? I'll give you an example. This morning, I received an email, and I get this every morning, of ANow telling me what's going on. And much to my surprise, there was a report that was due today. Now, due today actually doesn't mean due to the client. We kind of cheat the system a little bit, and it keeps us on track to get things in before they're actually due. But it's very rare that email shows up on my end with a due date. In other words, we typically get things in much quicker than that. And so I immediately jumped on and talked to my operations manager and said, hey, what's going on with this? And she said, oh, I forgot to change it in A now. They actually pushed the inspection of the borrower and pushed the inspection back. Therefore, we had to push the due date back. And she went ahead and did that. But I would not know that was due without this process that we go through and the software to help me to do that. Those are the types of things that A Now can help you with. Check them out. Go to anow.com/coach. One more time, it's anow.com/coach. All right, folks, welcome back. We're talking with Mr. Brandon Reich of Choice Valuation Software, talking a little bit about Spark and Trend Sheet. Let me just pause here and just tell you why we do what we do here. As the appraiser coach, it's kind of this unique situation where my goal is to get information out to appraisers, no matter what that information is. And as you know, I have sponsors here on the program, certain software that I use on a regular basis, and so I can thus testify of why I use them and what they will do. We just talked about Anow Software. You know some of my other sponsors, but I am not immune to reaching out. In fact, my goal as the appraiser coach from the very beginning was to make sure that appraisers have tools in their toolbox that they can utilize, that they know what's available out there, and that they can make an informed decision. And so I wanted to have Brandon on today to talk about his software, but more importantly, to talk about this idea of support for adjustments. Brandon, welcome back to the program, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
You and I talked jokingly earlier about the support for adjustments, and the little sheet that you had pinned to your wall that said you need to do this, that, or the other. And I know you were saying that tongue in cheek, but let's be honest, many of us have actually had that sheet as we were trained, right? And right. Adjustments need to be here. Fireplaces are $2,500, and decks are $4,000, and you always use $35 a square foot, and all this other thing. But we have obviously over the last little while been pushed by our clients to be more consistent with adjustments, more explanation, more reason behind it. And as we've done that, I know personally my GLA adjustment has gone up considerably since I started really focusing on it. I mean, I'm just honest here, right? I'm throwing up my hands and saying, you know what? I did it like everybody else did it for a long time, but I had to get serious about it several years ago. I'm glad I did, because I think I know my appraisal work got a lot better. But let's talk about that for a second, okay? First of all, you've seen the same trend. You said you're an active appraiser. You've seen the same trend that I've seen. That over the years, these individuals have gotten more serious about wanting us as appraisers to support our adjustments. And frankly, I think that's a good direction to go. In your opinion, why is it important to support adjustments? Aren't appraisers good enough? They can throw comps in there, basically know where things need to be, and have an output.
Right? Like there's so many appraisers that, I still have appraisers calling me saying that their client is upset because the whole I've been appraising for 30 years explanation isn't working anymore. I get that on at least a weekly basis. Yeah. That's not going to fly, as I'm sure pretty much every appraiser listening to you probably knows by now. There's a couple reasons why it's important. One, of course, if it's an assignment condition, if your client wants that, then you got to provide it to them. Sure. When you accept that deal, you're agreeing to their conditions. And then two, of course, is in USPAP. Of course, USPAP. And by the way, Dustin, you had a great, I don't know what you call it, an article, blog, or something last week about adjustments. And you talked about how the word adjustment doesn't appear in USPAP at all. And of course, that's absolutely true. But it is important that you support what you're doing. And so there is the record keeping rule, and in scope of work, it talks about, having, I don't have it in front of me, but something about being able to show your results are credible, that kind of thing. So I would say that that's probably one of the most important reasons, because USPAP tells us we have to do it. You got to have support for your opinions and conclusions, and an adjustment is an opinion or a conclusion that you're drawing. So you got to have support for it for that reason. Of course, if your client wants it, you gotta show how you got to that number, and essentially, when it comes down to it, with adjustments, there are a whole bunch of different methods you can use. And of course, there's the pulled from air method that a lot of us have been using. And I'm not accusing, I'm certainly guilty of it. And I I swear to you, when I first was trained, everyone in our office did have that piece of paper stapled to their wall that told us what all the adjustments were. So
I had it too.
I'm
I had it too.
guilty of it.
Not just hypothetically. I had it. I mean, literally had it. I did.
yeah. So when you're going in and you're deciding now, okay, I have to have a real reason for why I'm making this adjustment. I can't just say it's because I'm experienced and I know. And by the way, there's a lot to say for experience. I'm not discounting that at all, by no means, because it's that experience and all that, the wisdom and knowledge we've gained. Like, I'm sure you'll go back and just like I do, and I'll look at appraisals I did 5 years ago when I thought I totally knew what I was doing, and I'll be like, why was I doing that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And so we all have these times where we can sit back and we can learn and we can change the way we're doing things. And basically when it comes to the adjustments, there's a bunch of different methods you can use. And appraisers, I've seen appraisers talk about how I use sensitivity, or I use paired sales, or I use regression or whatever. And as long as you're using something that you think is giving you credible results, then I think that's great. And what I would recommend to appraisers, though, is don't rely on just one method. I've actually taken classes from what I think are considered to be reputable instructors on adjustments. And I've actually heard some people say things like, well, if the cost is telling you that your adjustment for your swimming pool is $40,000, then that's the adjustment you make. And I mean, even if it doesn't make sense, you just make it because that's what the data is telling you. And this is where I think it's important to bring in that whole experience topic that we were just talking about. Like, you've been doing this for 20 years. You probably know that swimming pool isn't, to a typical buyer, worth $40,000. They're not two houses next to each other, one with that pool. They're probably not going to pay 40 grand more. So that's where it's important to use this experience that we've got, this knowledge that we've gained. It's not an exact science. The data, as far as getting your numbers, that's going to be an exact science, but then deciding what to do with those numbers. And one thing I like that you touched on in that article last week is you talked about how you can get a bunch of different numbers and have a range. And then at that point, that's where your knowledge and experience as an appraiser, as an expert in the area, comes into play, because you got to decide, okay, am I throwing out that 40 grand for a swimming pool because that's not even close, or is that a legit number and I should really consider it? So I appreciated that when I read that last week, because I think that hits on a really important topic. And like you also said, it's important for appraisers.
That's the difference between an AVM and an appraiser. If you simply go with the data and it's a single pinpoint, well, fine, just plug it into a computer and have the computer spit it back out. But really, where an appraiser's expertise, knowledge, skill, and abilities come in is that determination, that analysis side. Once we have the numbers, then we decide, what's important and what's not.
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't agree more. That's really what sets us apart from those AVMs. And from, when they go in and they calculate things, they have these really rigorous methods and based on a whole bunch of data, which is awesome and it's great. But it's just that you lose out on the part that the appraiser has to offer, which can be a huge difference in value to the home. It could be a difference between a $400,000 house actually being 250 or 600, So yeah, I think it's super important. And I do think, though, that for us to remain relevant and show that we are worth it, it is important to go in and support why we did things. And so when I look at adjustments, and so we were talking about Trend Sheet, and there's other great tools for adjustments out there, by the way. There's Josh Wallet. He has a cool tool that's full regression called Market Machine. There's GandySoft. There's a bunch of tools out there. David Braun has a really cool one as well that uses regression. So I say the appraiser should use multiple methods, because you're going to get a range. And then just like I treat my range of potential adjustments for, let's say, just say swimming pool, I treat that like I treat my comps. So just like you go in and you reconcile, okay, well, comp 1 was adjusting a bit high, comp 3 was a bit low, comp 2 was almost identical to my subject, so I'm probably going to place most weight on that. I treat my adjustments the same way. I'll say, well, the simple regression method for swimming pool came up with this number that seems really high. It doesn't match anything. If I use sensitivity, it throws my grid way off and it makes everything look wonky. I'm going to place much weight on that, and I'll place more weight on this. And so I treat it like that. And I think it's important, though, that you do have that support, because we do want to show our clients that, hey, we're here for a reason. There's value to this, and we want you to keep using appraisers.
Right. And I'm going to be bold here. I'm just going to say it because I think everybody's thinking it. If we continue, appraisers, to do what we've always done, in other words, if we continue to pull that adjustment out of the air, or that little piece of paper that's stapled to the side of your cubicle, or whatever the case may be, if we continue to do that, I think that we are going to prove to the skeptics that we aren't worth our weight, and that the value is not there to use an appraiser. I think that if we're going to remain relevant, and so many people are crying about hybrids and crying about desktops and crying about all of these changes that are happening. Well, if you want to remain relevant into the future, we need to make sure that we remain relevant into the future. And that means that we actually go through and do the analysis and make sure that we have support for the things that we're doing. We can't continue to do what we've always done and get what we've always gotten. The world is moving on.
Agreed.
All right, my friend.
Definitely agree.
Final advice for appraisers that you would give?
I would, for those appraisers that embraced technology, software products, don't be scared of it. I just saw an appraiser post on Facebook yesterday about how it's not going to be useful to him, and that might be true. But I would just encourage everybody to go give it a shot. Regardless of the software you're talking about, just go and try it. You should be using a tool to help you be efficient. You should be using a tool to help give you support for your adjustments. So go out there and check out those tools. Almost all of them have free trials. So I would encourage everybody to go check those out. They are useful. I would say to 99% of appraisers, they're going to be useful. Yeah,
and I would even push that a little bit further based on what you said earlier. Not just a tool, but tools. I hope that we have multiple tools in our toolbox, and because every situation might demand a little something different. For those that want to utilize the tool that you have, the Spark, the Trend Sheet Lite, give us a little bit of detail as to where they can go.
Yeah, thanks, Dustin. So the website for Spark is spark4appraisers.com, and you can either spell out 4 or you can type the number 4. It doesn't matter, spark4appraisers.com. And then for Trend Sheet, that is actually the company website, which is choicevaluation.com. That's where you can find Trend Sheet there if you're interested. All
right, Choice Valuation, singular, not plural, no S at the end of that, choicevaluation.com, right?
You got it, exactly. And anyone can call me anytime. The number is 888-699-3450. And you're either going to get myself or my partner who helped start this up with me.
I love it, my friend. Thank you so much, Brandon. I appreciate you being on and
man, Dustin, thank you.
Sharing another tool out there that appraisers ought to look at. And one way or the other, we need to make sure that we're transitioning with the world and making sure that we're supporting. I'll just tell a brief story here as we end. I am friends with. I'm not going to use his name because I don't have permission, but I'm sure he would give it. But I just haven't cleared this with him. But I talked recently with an individual that has served on a state board, and one of the things that he mentioned to me, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but he said, for 100 appraisers that stand before the state board, maybe 2 of them have a better answer than, hey, this is the way I've always done it, or, hey, I've been doing this 30 years and I know what I'm doing. And he said, what's interesting is we don't usually as a state board get into the nitty gritty details of why they came up with the adjustments that they came up with, meaning the two individuals out of 100, because we're just so shocked that someone actually has support for value for adjustments that we're picking our jaw up off the floor and saying, okay, not that they just give them a pass, but that just puts you in a different realm at that point. So not that I'm saying that you use something like this or some of the other tools out there that you'll get a free pass with the state board, but I think you might be in a little bit better favor if you do so. So Brandon, thank you, my friend. Man. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. That was Brandon Reich of Choice Valuation. Again, choicevaluation.com or Spark for Appraisers. I better bring that back on, make sure I'm getting that right. It's Spark for Appraisers, plural, right?
You got it.
Okay, perfect. Brandon Reich with us, a good friend of mine, great guy. And again, appraisers, lots of tools out there. We talk about these tools on our Appraiser Academy on a regular basis. So one of my goals every single month is to get a group of appraisers together. And we typically have a couple dozen appraisers on a live interactive meeting where it's video, it's audio, and we're talking and we're going through some of these tools and talking about how they work and how you can improve your business and your appraisal structure. Join us, won't you? Please go to theappraisercoach.com/memberships and check out the Appraiser Academy today.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.
Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Hey, how's it going, Dustin?
Good, Brandon. How are you?
Super.
I'm glad.
You ready for this?
I'm as ready as I'm going to be. How about you?
Okay. No, I'm not ready. I'm not.
All right. Well, I'll give you a minute. I'm excited, man. This will be fun.
Okay.
Right.
I'm going to assume you're right.
It'll be fun. I promise it.